Hello, welcome back. This video is an updated version of a video I produced for a guest slot on Bane666's channel. A link to the original video will be in the description box below. The reason I decided to update this video is because of a question that was asked in the comment section of the original. The comment referred to statistics relating to sudden infant death, or SID. Now, before we go any further, the topic we're discussing in this video is extremely sensitive, so I think it worth emphasizing that these statistics I present do not suggest that sudden infant death is anything other than a tragedy in most cases. However, there are anomalies evident in these statistics, and it is these anomalies we are considering in this video. The data and statistics used in this video are the work of William Collins. A link to his original article can be found in the description box below. Without the meticulous work of Mr. Collins and his generosity, this video would not be possible. Several weeks ago, I was researching a video. The video was in relation to a Women's Aid report titled 19 Child Homicides. The video itself was titled Women's Aid. Now, as is often the case when researching a topic, you often chance on a report or a set of statistics that make little sense. They appear to be an anomaly, at least until you start digging. What had caught my attention in this instance was the data on prosecutions for child infanticide, or rather the fact that there were more convictions for infanticide than there were prosecutions. When we look at the percentages, they look like this. For the years 2002-2013 in England and Wales, we see that out of all convictions under the Infanticide Act 1938, no more than 25% were as a result of a prosecution for infanticide. In fact, there were 3 times as many convictions than prosecutions. This had to be a mistake, surely. Sadly, as we will soon discover, there is an explanation, and the reason for this discrepancy and the consequence that follows is the subject of today's video. We all know how easy it is for a woman to get an abortion in Western countries. Indeed, some feminists such as Jessica Valenti advocate that convenience alone is justification for termination, a view she expressed in an article she wrote for the Feminista website. The headline: Feminists rejoice at abortion for convenience. This leaves the reader in no doubt in relation to her stance on the matter. Like many feminists, she also expresses the view that there should be no legal limitation on abortion. She believes that there should be no upper limit to when an abortion should be performed, a position she clarified in a Guardian article, in which she stated the following, and I quote, "There were a lot of passionate responses to my piece last week. My 28-week pregnancy and 20-week abortion ban, why choice still matters." Comments ranged from the supportive to the horrified. One question that came up several times, however: am I actually arguing that there should be no legal limitation on abortion? The short answer is yes. Valenti, it seems, takes the view that a woman has the right to terminate pregnancy even days before birth. You and I were just lucky, I suppose, that if our mothers shared this view, at least they did not act on it. But if, as Valenti advocates, women should be able to dispose of a child even days before birth, what about a few days after birth, once we are actually born, once we are free from the maternal life support system? Surely then we can breathe a sigh of relief. We don't have to worry anymore that our mothers can kill us and get away with it. Or do we? Infanticide is defined as the killing of a child under 1 year by its mother. Infanticide is recognized as a crime distinct from murder or manslaughter, specifically, it seems, to permit leniency towards mothers. Women are virtually never given a custodial sentence for infanticide, regardless of brutality. In fact, very few infanticide cases are even brought before the court. And this brings us to that anomaly we looked at earlier. What emerges from the evidence is that women are very rarely charged with infanticide, but rather infanticide is used as a fallback when charges of murder are brought against a mother in relation to infant death. What is significant here is that the prosecuting authorities consider it worthwhile in all such cases of pursuing a charge of murder, and yet the outcome is never a prison sentence, even after a guilty verdict, because the charge is always reduced to that of infanticide if the child is under 1 year old. In the 11-year period 2002-2013 in the UK, no convictions for infanticide resulted in a prison sentence, and when we look at the percentages, the sentences handed down for convictions look like this. Community sentence is 67%. Hospital orders, 17%. Conditional discharge is 8%. Suspended sentences, 8%. And of course, custodial sentences, 0. So the most likely outcome for a conviction for infanticide is a community sentence. Some result in hospital orders or suspended sentences. Males, on the other hand, typically receive life sentences for similar crimes. An extremely small proportion of infanticide cases are ever brought before the court. The few convictions we see for infanticide are almost always the result of a murder charge being downgraded to infanticide. No sane defence would ever object to this reduction in charge, for the simple reason that they would be aware that even if convicted, their client would never receive a custodial sentence. In his 1992 book, No More Sex War, The Failures of Feminism, Sinclair Stevenson wrote, and I quote, "Most of those babies are murdered by their mothers, many of them beaten to death. The crime is not counted as murder. It exists in the separate category of infanticide. The perpetrators are accorded special treatment in the courts and are most unlikely to be sentenced to any long-term detention." David Thomas, in his 1993 book, Not Guilty, in Defence of the Modern Man, drew attention to the curious way in which the criminal justice system in the UK treats infanticide, and I quote, "In the period 1980 to 1990, 293 children less than 1 year old were victims of homicide in Britain, yet only 42 suspects were charged with homicide, infanticide in the same period. And as we have discovered, mothers charged with homicide inevitably have that charge reduced to that of infanticide at trial. In the years 1989-90, the discrepancy was even more marked. There were 50 child victims, but only 1 suspect was brought to court. This observation implies that the overwhelming majority of the killing of children under 1 year are infanticides, i.e., they are committed by mothers. This is because the perpetrator will almost always be known in the case of a baby killing, and male perpetrators will be prosecuted virtually every time. It turns out that infanticide, a crime that can only be perpetrated by women, is treated by the courts and society as little more than postnatal abortion. The mother can get away with it almost as easily as with the more conventional procedure. This is extremely concerning, even though it involves the taking of a life, and most reasonable people would have to conclude that it is a particularly brutal and by definition fatal form of child abuse. Yet our legal system treats it as a trivial matter. The question that most reasonable people might be asking at this point is why? We now move on to an even more sensitive topic, that is the prevalence of sudden infant death in the UK. In the year 2014, there were 2,517 infant deaths in England and Wales, compared with 903 deaths of children aged 1 to 14. Hence, infant deaths accounted for 74% of all deaths of those up to the age of 14. Children aged 1 to 4 are nearly twice as likely to die as children aged 10 to 14. We will be taking a close look at infant death rates for parents with various different living arrangements for the years 2014, 2013 and 2012 respectively. What is surprising is that in every category and for every year, death rates per 1,000 increase in the following order: married couples, cohabiting couples, non-cohabiting couples, and lone mothers with an uninvolved father. In this graph, we see the death rates for all causes across different categories. It should be mentioned here that when the cause of an infant's death is unknown, pathologists have a choice between two categories: sudden infant death or unascertained. Sudden infant death is defined as, and I quote, "the sudden unexpected death of any infant or young child which is unexpected by medical history, and in which a thorough post-mortem examination fails to demonstrate an adequate cause of death." Unascertained is used by pathologists when the death does not fulfill the criteria used for sudden infant death, and there is still doubt about its cause. So, looking at the graph, we see a significant difference between these two categories. Why would there be this disparity? The first thing one might consider is that there is a sociological or economic factor, which leads us to the second graph, in which we see the unexplained infant death rates for married couples versus that for unmarried joint registrants for the same socio-economic group 2004 to 2014. There does appear to be a socio-economic component, but we are still left with a significant and as yet unexplained disparity between two populations. If that is not obvious, then we can graph the infant death rate by socio-economic group. The disparity is consistent across all three groups: managerial, intermediate, and manual. The question that now needs to be asked is, yet again, why? There is little doubt that a non-trivial proportion of sudden infant deaths are in fact homicide. Stephen Carey's et al. Published in a report in Paediatrics, February 2001, and observed that recently well-validated reports of child abuse and infanticide perpetrated by suffocation and masqueraded as apparent life-threatening events, ALTE and or SIDS, have appeared in the medical literature and in the lay press. Parents of infants with recurrent ALTEs have been observed trying to suffocate and harm their infants. In Great Britain, covert video surveillance was used to assess child abuse risk in 39 young children referred for evaluation of recurrent ALTEs. Abuse was revealed in 33 of 39 cases, with documentation of intentional suffocation observed in 30 patients. Among 41 siblings of the 39 infants in the studies, 12 previously died suddenly and unexpectedly, although 11 of these deaths had been classified as SIDS. 4 parents later admitted to suffocating 8 of these siblings. Other cases, previously thought to be multiple SIDS deaths within a family, have been revealed to be cases of multiple homicide by suffocation. The potential impact this might have on the overall child homicide statistics could be considerable. The total number of unexplained infant deaths in 2014 was 212 in England and Wales. This compares with child homicide rates of around 70 per annum. Hence, if even a small percentage of unexplained infant deaths are actual homicides, as seems likely, then this will cause a marked increase in total child homicides and increase the numbers of females found culpable of child killings significantly, which may well account for the reticence on the part of child protection services and the prosecuting authorities to address this issue. We end our adventure at this point. I hope you found something of interest in this video. If you would like to support my channel, I now have a Patreon page. If you're unable to support my work through Patreon, then you can share, like, or comment. It's all good. Thank you for watching.